Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. I kind of like this new intro music. Today on Rambling About Cars, no V8, no problem when you have 671 horsepower in a four-cylinder hybrid. Folks, that's the 2024 Mercedes-AMG C63 SE Performance. Deep breath.
Take a breath.
We're gonna talk about that. There's the latest Last Call Dodge Challenger. We're gonna talk about Maverick order books, Chrysler 300 sold out, and we're gonna do some fun car horror movie stuff because we're getting close to Halloween. So, without further ado, it's podcast time. I am Christopher Smith, and Mr. Chris Bruce is across the way as always. Good to see you, man.
Everybody. Hey, man. Yeah, it'll be a fun one tonight. We got some cool car stuff to talk about and some cool car movie stuff to talk about. I know we just talked about car movies, I think it was 3 weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago, but this is very specific. This is going to be a horror-themed car movie talk because I know by the time this comes out, it'll be kind of towards the end of September, and it's time to start watching those scary movies, folks.
Dude, I've bought 3 bags of Halloween candy already. It is that time.
Yeah, I've watched. What have I watched? I watched It Follows, The Thing, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, wow.
And Videodrome so far. So, yeah, it's that time of the year. I love watching the scary movies. I've got a bunch of them, and we're going to share some of our favorites. But without further ado, real quick, like, follow, comment, subscribe, do all those stuff, do all those things, and let's talk about the new and deep breath, Mercedes-AMG C63 SE Performance. Yes.
We didn't even rehearse that. We just pulled that off right now.
Yeah,
we should be in Hollywood, man.
Or just on a real radio, not the internet.
This is real radio. We love our listeners out there in podcasts.
Oh, totally. We love our listeners, but we are not being broadcast across the airwaves. People have to find us and download us. But regardless of that, the C63 SE Performance, blah, blah, blah. This is the new top dog of the C-Class lineup. And like you said at the beginning of the show, no longer a V8. It's been a V8 for decades. I was talking with Brett T. Evans, who wrote up the story for us and attended all the stuff for us. He wrote up the story, and the C55 was a supercharged. Was it supercharged or turbocharged? I'm pretty sure it was supercharged.
Back in the day, I think that was supercharged. Yeah. And we're talking a
naturally aspirated V8. The latest model, twin turbo 4-liter V8. And now a 4-cylinder.
A 2-liter 4-cylinder. But Bruce, I know you've read this. I know you know the stats.
I do.
The 4-cylinder. Now, this is a hybrid, but the 4-cylinder alone, how much power?
476 horsepower.
I love that. 476 horsepower.
And that's
a 2-liter,
exactly.
A 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It's what their M139, I think.
Oh,
the
yes,
code,
it is the M139. You were about to lose me there, but yeah.
476 horsepower. It is the most powerful production 4-cylinder you can get. And then they give it an electric motor with an additional...
Well, technically, they give it 2 electric motors, and we can get into that in a second. They give it 1 drive electric motor, and that's what gets you up to the 671 horsepower. And the torque figure from... You hear, a 2-liter turbo, how much torque could it have? But with that electric motor, 752 pound-feet of torque. Let me put
752 pound-feet of torque.
671 horsepower, 752 pound-feet of torque.
So, yeah, I know it doesn't have a V8 burble, but I don't care. You can still have a great sounding 4-cylinder. And I know Mercedes, they say that they have some augmented sound inside. Well, not augmented per se. They say that there is sound pumped inside, but it's just the natural sound of the engine that's amplified. So it's not supposed to be It's not supposed to be tweaked or anything. I'm really curious to hear how it sounds. And I know there are the people that will say, V8. Hey, I have a big loud V8 in my garage. I love it as much as the next person. But when you're talking about stats like this, 476 horsepower from a 2-liter turbo production engine just by itself is amazing. And
Yep.
then that rear motor adds the extra 204 horsepower, combined 671 horsepower, 752 pound-feet of torque. But
well, I just want to throw in that other electric motor that I was talking about. It has an electrically driven supercharger, which we've talked about recently on the SL class, which also has this tech where there's an electric motor that spins the turbo up. So even in a situation where you might generally experience turbo lag, in this situation, you have an electric motor turning the turbo. And in theory, and I haven't driven one of these, I don't think you've driven one of these.
I have not.
It means no turbo lag, because rather than waiting for exhaust gases to spin that turbine, you've got an electric motor doing it for you, and then eventually exhaust gases get in there and do it.
Once the revs get up there, the exhaust gases take over.
Yeah.
So turbo lag, in theory, is a non-issue. Of course, it is all-wheel drive with that electric motor driving the rear wheels. Now, it is a plug-in hybrid, which means you can go electric only if you want. It has
very far.
It has a whopping 8 miles of electric only range.
Yeah, but hey, so you can get down the block and then the electric.
I mean, if you're going into a city where maybe there's a there's a congestion charge or something that could be avoided if you're running electric only, it's there. Neat thing is that rear electric motor, there's a clutch built into it where it can also spin the drive shaft to power the front wheel. So even if you're electric only, it's not just on the rear wheels. You still have all 4 wheels turning, which is, I mean, I guess it's kind of a neat feature, but obviously 8 miles of range, the focus of Mercedes here, and they even say as much. It's like, we didn't build the Mercedes-AMG C63 SE Performance to be efficient. It's all about performance. It's all about power. It's not about how far you can go on battery only, but it's there if you want to go for 8 miles without making a sound.
And if you want to really find the tiniest of tiny complaint about this, so the top speed of the new C63 is 174 miles per hour. The old C63 with the optional AMG driver's package was 180 miles per hour.
Oh,
now,
for shame.
I don't know who is going to complain about 6 miles per hour.
Nope. I'm complaining
that you would immediately go to jail in everywhere except for basically the Autobahn.
I'm calling my contact and canceling my order right now. I was not aware that it was 6 miles per hour slower than the outgoing model.
Yeah.
174, 0 to 60. Yeah, but 0 to 60 is in 3.3 seconds. That's half second quicker than the previous gen. So
yeah,
that's where most people are going to enjoy that power anyway.
Totally.
It's just, I mean, it's a C63. It may not have a V8, but in my mind, it's just as bonkers and crazy as ever. And I really dig the turbo badges that they have on the fenders on this car.
Yeah, they look good. They look very good.
And I mean, as far as then aesthetics, obviously the front, it's got more aggressive front fascia. It's got the typical AMG upgrades. It's got the typical AMG tweaks inside. But really, you're thinking about 671 horsepower. That's at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
For our European pals, for any of our European listeners out there,
I forgot about
this in a wagon as well.
Oh, I hate you. I hate you. Not that I can afford any of those wagons.
Right. But it will be available in both sedan and wagon form in Europe. They have not said the wagon's not coming to the US, but we're pretty sure the wagon's not coming to the US. That's a safe expectation.
I think it's safe.
Yeah. We don't have pricing yet. So to put it in perspective, the current model costs $69,650. If you get the S package that I was referring to, that gives you more power and the higher top speed, that's $77,000. I would expect the new one is going to cost every bit of that, if not maybe a little bit more, just the way inflation, material cost, stuff like that's going.
And there's a lot more technology in this too. I mean,
totally. Yeah.
I mean,
the plug-in,
it's a completely different animal.
Yeah. So
now there is a little bit of an elephant in the room to discuss.
Okay, what's that? I don't know what your elephant is.
Well, in this case, I mean, it's not literally an elephant. Well, how much does an elephant weigh? Because this car is approximately 700 pounds heavier than the previous generation. It's what is it here on my stats?
It's almost 5,000 pounds.
Estimated at around 4,600 pounds.
Yeah, that's right.
That's hefty. That's heavy. That's heavier than a second generation Ford F-150 Lightning pickup truck.
Yeah. For what is essentially somewhere between mid-size and compact, with vehicle sizes changes. But generally, when we talk about Mercedes, kind of the C class, in my mind, is always the starting point. Yes, I know there's the A class and the CLA out there, but you think C class and 3 Series, that those are kind of the two models that compete against each other. 4,600 pounds is a lot.
It's pretty beefy. It's pretty beefy. The Dodge Challenger guys right now are just saying, and you think I drive a boat. But hey, these days with modern technology in vehicles, weights are up all over the place, and automakers are doing generally a pretty good job of managing that extra mass, especially companies like Mercedes. So it might be heavier. I suspect it's still just going to be an absolute riot to drive, and especially to toss around a track. So tossing the weight out there, but we'll reserve judgment until we have a chance to drive it.
Totally. And also, we're going to be talking about another Mercedes later in this show that if you want the purest Mercedes, it exists, and it looks really cool. It's slower. I'll be fair. But when you see it, I think you'll like it.
It's slower, but it doesn't. It's got how much? Okay, we'll just tease that here. It might have more or less horsepower. I can't remember exactly which, but you want to stay tuned for that later because
it's almost the same. It's close. Put it that
way.
It's
close. It's really cool, and it's not something that I think anybody would expect, which is why I love it even more. So yeah, 2024 Mercedes-AMG C63 SE Performance. That's quite a name. But what else do we have to talk about here, Bruce?
Well, let's talk about the 2023 Dodge Challenger Black Ghost, which is essentially a Challenger SRT red eye with a whole lot of black stuff on it. It's the latest in Dodge's Last Call model series, which if you've been listening to the show, you've been hearing a lot about them. Is this number 6 or number 5? I was trying to think about
this. This is number 6. So
this is number 6. Okay.
This is the last of the weekly debuts. Right. Dodge launched their first Last Call edition at the end of August. That was the Challenger Shakedown, I believe, if memory serves me correct.
That sounds right.
At the end of August. And then every week, every Wednesday, they've been debuting a new one. And it started with basically appearance packages on the Scat Pack cars, which that's the 6.4 liter V8, 485 horsepower, not slow by any means. And they've all been pretty darn cool. And then last week, just as we're getting all of this information about the new Mustang, Dodge switched it considerably higher with their Charger King Daytona. That was an upgraded Charger Hellcat red eye wide body. And they pumped that up to 807 horsepower along with the appearance package.
Which they're only making 300 of those.
Only 300. And this week now, the Dodge Challenger Black Ghost is sort of the Challenger version of that. It's based on the Hellcat, the SRT Hellcat red eye wide body. It also has the engine upgraded to 807 horsepower, which puts it right on par there with the Dodge SRT Superstock from a couple years ago. They're only
making 300 of these.
They're only going to make 300 of these as well. And Black Ghost, it actually came with an interesting story that's growing up in Southeast Michigan I didn't know about, but then again, this was going on before I was born, so I have reason to not know about it.
Okay, I didn't hear this part. So
Black Ghost is they didn't just paint a car and name it Black Ghost. There was this, I guess, somewhat of a legendary person driving up and down Woodward Avenue, infamous Woodward Avenue in the 70s.
Okay.
And I'm trying to be intentionally coy here because I'm not sure. We don't want to promote street racing, right?
We do not.
So there was a person that would occasionally cruise Woodward in a black 1970 Dodge Challenger with a 426 Hemi. And it had white stripes on the back. And this car would show up every now and again and put on a show and then disappear for like months at a time and then come back. I found out later. And that original car is actually in like a national registry somewhere. I didn't realize it was that big of a legend. The gentleman was a police officer that had just.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He had just started.
Okay.
And yeah, the whole point was, okay, I still want to go out and do this, but I don't really want to get caught. That's the gist of the story as I understood it. But that created this legend of the Black Ghost, this black 1970 Dodge Challenger that like once every few months, all of a sudden it's out here on Woodward, just whipping everybody's behind. Right. So,
okay.
I think it's pretty neat that Dodge dove into, like specific history, not just like model history, but like this aura of a person. And the Charger King Daytona from last week, sort of the same thing. That's an homage to a well-known drag racer on drag strips on the West Coast back in the 60s and 70s. So these last two, very, very different from the previous ones, that came before. Dodge also said, I'm going to get back to you, Bruce, in just a minute. Dodge also said with this car, the Challenger, it's a prelude to their 7th and final last call model. That's not going to be. I was
going to mention that. Yep.
That's not going to be revealed until SEMA.
Yeah. Which is for November, correct?
Yep, early November. It's always late October, early November. I think it officially starts November 1st this year.
Okay.
Which means we'll probably start hearing things for media presentations
a couple of weeks before that.
Yeah,
2-3 weeks.
2 weeks, maybe the last week of October there.
Yeah.
And with that hint, okay, this 807 horsepower Challenger prelude, there was the unconfirmed report that we actually covered. I think it's been about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That Dodge might have like an E85 tuned Challenger with 900 horsepower. That they're going to show. That's unconfirmed at this point, but we did cover the story, and it seems more likely than not at this point. It's going to be the last. It's going to be the last Charger, the last Challenger. What I was getting
into is that if you look at these last call specials, they started with kind of trim and paint packages, which that's cool for some people. But then in the last few weeks, we've seen this super cool Charger. We've seen this super cool Challenger, and they're pretty cool. And they can only go up from here because you can't disappoint people and be like, oh, this is the last call. This is our final last call. Oh, this one just has special wheels. You can't do that.
Yeah, you're not going to show up to SEMA after all of this pomp and circumstance, especially with the teaser going along with the Black Ghost saying, this is kind of a prelude of what's going to be coming at SEMA. Right. It seems pretty likely that, okay, they're going to have a badass Challenger. And with the rumor that we had before of an E85 tuned model with 900 horse, that would be a proper way to send it out.
It would be, because we know that in the future Dodge is going electric, just like every other automaker is. We know that an electric. We don't know whether they're called a Charger, a Challenger, or something else, but we know it's coming. And so that is going to usher this brand in kind of a new way. And so they're going out with a bang, and I love it. I really do. I wish more automakers were doing this, that hey, we can't do this anymore. We're going to just put, hey, we might make 300 of them. We might make 200 of them. We are going to make the very best combustion engine vehicle, the most powerful combustion engine vehicle we can. And we are going to sell them. And we might lose money on them. I don't know if Dodge is losing money on this. I can't say that, but we're going to do a couple of these just to say, out with the old, in with the new,
And here's a big hat tip to the old, because it's worth it. Now, Bruce, did you give us that speech on purpose to set us up for the Chrysler 300C news?
I didn't actually, but I certainly can
make
that.
Didn't. That's amazing. Okay, you should be faking it. Come on.
Yeah.
Because that's brilliant, because you're talking about, hey, let's last hurrah, let's go out, don't know if we'll sell them all. Well, guess what?
In this case, they sold them all
in 12 hours. We talked about this last week. Chrysler, just like the Charger and the Challenger, this is the last year for the Chrysler 300C. They announced last week that they're bringing back the Chrysler 300C. They give it the 485 horsepower, 6.4 liter V8. Mm-hmm. And they said they're going to build 2,000 all total. And
2,000 for the US, 200 for Canada. So
2,200 all total. And Chrysler then said that they filled all of that in 12 hours. And there's now a waiting list. Now,
in case one of those folks decide, hey, I don't want this. I don't know who would do that. Like, I mean, I guess, you lose your job. There's a family. Who knows? Something might happen. But in general, everyone who put their name down for one of these, I suspect, is going to be very happy and get their one of 2,200 vehicles in a year's time.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, just to refresh your memory, 6.4 liter V8, Chrysler says 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, quarter mile 12.4 seconds, top speed of 160 miles per hour. It'll be the last hurrah for the big 300, which has been around. I mean, I know this is the second generation that I think came out in 2011.
Yep.
But it's not far removed from the first generation that came out in 2005. So it's definitely been around for a long time. They could have done what so many other brands have done, like you were just talking about, Bruce. They could have said, hey, it's the last of the 300C. We'll give it just a final edition here, and we'll give it a different coat of paint on the wheels, and here's a badge, and just be done with it. Right. The fact that they brought back the C, they've got the engine in there. They're listening to their enthusiasts. They're listening to their people. And it's nice to see that they responded. 2,200 vehicles in 12 hours. And I feel like there are a lot of people that want to make fun of the 300 for existing.
Oh, there are. If you look at our comments,
long as it has,
I can read the comments to you that people are mocking this vehicle. But
it's just like, just let it go. This thing has been around forever. It has a dedicated following. I still think it looks, I always thought it looked cool, and I still think it looks cool if dated. And that doesn't matter. I think it looks great. I'm glad to see a little bit of love given back to it just before it heads on out. So, I wrote up an article on the Nissan Maxima this week because we got pricing for the 2023 Maxima. And of course, this is the final year for the Nissan Maxima. That's another long running sedan that's had an enthusiast following through its history. And now, admittedly, I'm one of those people. I especially love like the 99 to 02 models. And then, they upgraded where you get, I think it was 260 horse with the manual transmission. Those were some pretty cool cars. And it kind of faded a little bit after that. But they announced pricing. The only change for 2023 was an updated Nissan logo with their new look. And as I'm writing that, I'm thinking about the 300C, right? And I'm thinking about the Charger. And I'm wishing that Nissan could do something a little extra special with the Maxima for its final year, because that car, if memory serves me, debuted in 81 or 82. I mean, when it was still
original,
when it was still
Datsun.
It was Datsun at that point, rear wheel drive.
Okay.
And then the second generation, it switched to front wheel drive with a V6, and it stayed that way for the rest of its life. But I mean, we're talking 4 decades here.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice to see Nissan do a little something like what Chrysler and Dodge are doing. Am I wrong?
If we're getting nostalgia, like, yeah, the Maxima, the Datsun Maxima, that was the Toyota Cressida competitor. That both of those were 6-cylinder rear-wheel drive.
Yep. It was initially
for their time,
an inline 6 rear-wheel drive.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying they should come out with another 6-cylinder rear-wheel drive. Hey, you know what? Bring it back in a couple years as a 6-cylinder hybrid with rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive.
But you make a fair point there that is a storied name that they're kind of letting die slowly, whereas Chrysler and Dodge with the Charger and the 300C, they are sending them out with a bang. They are, and if you look at the commenters on our site on this story, people are saying, why would anyone buy this, stuff like that. But there are still people who love a big V8 powered sedan. And to me, the model that it evokes in my mind first is the Buick Roadmaster.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the sedan version that was rear wheel drive and V8? Smith, help me out here.
The Roadmaster was available in a sedan.
Okay.
And wagon.
So there was this Roadmaster wagon, and it was also available as a sedan.
I actually had one of each, a Roadmaster sedan and a Roadmaster wagon. The wagon looked much better, in my opinion.
That's the one that always comes to mind. But yeah, like those vehicles are kind of coveted today amongst a certain amount of group of people.
They really are.
Just a big, just large displacement V8 that can go forever. Like it's reliable. It loves to just kind of go long distances to cruise. Yeah, you can accelerate with it. The acceleration is not bad, but it just loves to cruise. And
the fact that they sold out of these in 12 hours,
exactly.
It shows that there are people out there that still want it. And I think there are also people that realize that this is the end of an era. I'm going to buy this, put it in my hermetically sealed garage, and revisit it in 20 years when it still just has 20 miles on the odometer and everything is electric. And, here will be a blast from the past. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there thinking that way as well. And I don't blame them.
I mean, the other
we are talking about the end of an era.
Is the Mercury Marauder, where those have appreciated now these days, where it was kind of the last of its era, where it was essentially a Grand Marquis / Crown Victoria with the big V8. And
it was a Grand Marquis. They gave it the double overhead cam, 4.6 liter V8 from the non-supercharged Mustang Cobra.
Yep.
Which we debated that at the time because I was pretty big with Ford at that point, or with Ford people. That engine was more of a high revving, kind of low torque-ish engine. Wasn't really a great match for the car.
But it was still
if they given it the supercharged
standards, it wasn't.
If they get, I don't mean to sound critical on the Marauder because I think it's cool as hell. But if they'd given it the Terminator engine with the supercharged V8, that would have made it the monster that it should have been. Anyways,
but obviously I'm a fan point that this is kind of the modern interpretation of that. This is a sedan that you can easily, people in the backseat of this thing, they're not going to feel cramped. I've sat in the back of a 300 and rode in the back of a 300. It's plenty spacious, but you're going to have plenty power under the hood. It's, it's a usable muscle car. People talk about, I can't use my sports car. You can't put groceries in it. I can't do XYZ. You could use this thing every day and still have a ton of fun. And know if you put your foot down in it, it's going to go hard. And so that's cool.
Yep, very cool. And I'm very glad to see that people have responded. Let's get your response, folks. What a segue. Email us, podcast@motor1.com. Are we crazy for liking the Chrysler 300C? And are we crazy for feeling happy that it sold out so quickly that there's still people out there that love it? Podcast@motor1.com. Send us your emails. Send us your comments on our YouTube page, Motor One Podcast on YouTube. Comment on our article that goes up every Friday at motor1.com summarizing the podcast. You know the drill by now. We love to hear from you. We
do.
love to read comments. Do we want to read comments now since we missed it last week, Bruce, or do we want to cover maybe another story or two before we get into it? Your call.
You suggested it. Let's go ahead and do some comments now. I'm fine with that.
Let's do some comments right now. Should
okay.
Let's start with email because
okay. Then I'm gonna leave that up to you because you got that pulled up.
Leave that up to me. I've got it pulled up here because we got another email from Eric, who emailed us. It's been almost a couple weeks now. Apologies that we didn't get to it last week, Eric. But Eric, he's been going back through some of the older podcasts, which you can do as well on Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever you get your audio podcast from. The list will be there. Motor One Podcast, all of our old podcasts are there that you can revisit anytime. And he went back to the best new cars of 2022 so far. That was about maybe a month?
6 weeks?
I guess more than that because we were trying to do it midway through the year. Yeah, that would have been back probably in late July.
Yeah, I think it was like 6 weeks.
And we had I believe we had Seth Mearsma on, we had Jeff Perez, we had Brett Evans. Just a big discussion on the best new cars that we've driven so far from the point of view of the road test editors. So a little bit of feedback on that. Eric says, first, the Rivian. We were talking about the Rivian on there. As a European, I will be lucky to ever see one, and due to our very different automotive culture, it just seems like another massive pickup truck. But as I've read about it more and more, could very well could. As I've read about it more and more, I've come to appreciate it. It's a great and interesting new entry to the American market with innovative and fresh features. As a fan of ICE cars, internal combustion engine cars, I would probably have a Raptor or TRX over it, but I can see it appealing to a lot of people. The people that I've talked to, Eric, that have driven it have just been amazed at how capable it is, not just from a performance standpoint on the road, but off the road. How it goes over rocks and just crawls like nobody's business. I don't know how I feel about Rivian. Yeah, I guess that's that. I guess that,
like as a business or like their products. What do you mean you don't know how you feel about Rivian? Just
I mean, I guess that's it. I don't really know how I feel. I guess I want to see how well they do in the future. I mean, everything that I've seen right now on performance looks great. But I just like a little bit of history, I guess, with the brand.
Yeah, that's understandable.
So I'm still waiting to say that. So I'm not going to have time to go through all of this. Eric, your emails are amazing. Please keep sending them as long as possible. We'll try to read as much of these as possible, but you make us think every time. Eric says, now the EQXX, this is the Mercedes. This isn't a vehicle that anybody will be able to buy, but it's an amazing concept that really takes the idea of aerodynamics and wraps it into what could be a practical vehicle with good performance and incredible range. And he says, now the EQXX, this is what I've wanted EVs to be ever since they became a thing. Super aerodynamic and efficient, but still usable and great looking cars. 1,200 kilometers, 750 miles in one charge is unheard of. I absolutely right there. And I really applaud Mercedes for finally taking electric vehicles seriously and doing what they always seem to do, deliver one of the best cars in the world. Sure, it will never go into mass production, but the technologies will trickle down. And as you suggested, there is a possibility for small production, sort of like the Volkswagen XL1. I'm going to take a little moment here on this because I think there are two mindsets right now in the EV world, Bruce. Tell me if you agree. There's the mindset that, here's how cars have always been designed. It's what people know. It's what they're familiar with. Let's stick with that basic design, but make it EV. Sure. And then there's the other camp that says, well, since we don't have to have an internal combustion engine or a radiator or a big cooling system or a big exhaust system or a big transmission somewhere, we can totally redesign this to make it suit an EV powertrain, and we can add this to it and we can add that to it.
Yeah.
But it's gonna look different. It's gonna look a little weird. There are these two camps, and I am strongly in the second. And I think Mercedes is going that way as well. When you look at their vehicles like the EQE, the EQS, the EQXX, as Eric said, really exploring what you can do aerodynamically. Hey, you can take a G-Class that's a brick and put an electric motor into it, and it's an EV. It's not going to be nearly as efficient as it could be if you go into the wind tunnel and really find a way to optimize that. So
totally.
So I very much appreciate that comment, Eric. I don't think we really have much time to read the rest because I know we have some YouTube comments to read, but I wanted to definitely touch on the EQXX because I think that's an outstanding point. Bruce, I mean, what's your take on that really quick?
Real quick, I agree with your take actually, is that I love when automakers kind of consider the future of EVs. And like you said, you don't need radiators. You don't have a large engine. You end up with, electric motors that are far, far more compact than what an internal combustion engine is. And that means you can completely overhaul the design of a vehicle. Like, we don't need big, long hoods. We don't need long overhangs. We don't need any of that stuff because the technology is completely different. The issue is getting people to accept those new shapes of this is what a car can look like when you don't need those things. And I think that is going to be the gradual process. Unfortunately, so I was watching a YouTube video. I think it was last week. Anyway, it was about the Chrysler Airflow. And if anyone hasn't looked that up, go ahead and type it in, and then go ahead and look up any other car from the time that the Chrysler Airflow came out. And it is revolutionary. It looks like no other car on the road. And it was called the Airflow because it was trying to be aerodynamic at a time where no one cared about aerodynamics. Like, gas was inexpensive. Vehicles were kind of made to be utilitarians, not necessarily fair, but they were much simpler things. And the Airflow did this thing that like nobody else was doing at the time. And unfortunately, it was a failure. Like,
it was ahead of its time.
It was ahead of its time.
It was literally ahead of its time.
And it was too far ahead of its time. People couldn't even accept it. And what ended up happening is a few years later, and I think it was literally a matter of 4 or 5 years later. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or on YouTube, but the Lincoln Zephyr came along and it did a lot of the same things as the Chrysler Airflow. It just didn't look quite as revolutionary, but it still had like the integrated headlights. It still had, kind of a lot of the other things. And it ended up being a success. Like, it was, Lincoln even ended up reviving the Zephyr name down the line. It was such a big success.
Yeah.
So it's a very complicated time because you can't go too far or you're going to turn customers off, but you still want to push them towards the future. And yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And these are the kind of comments that we love. We love all the comments.
Oh, totally.
The ones that really make us think, yeah, man, bring it on. Let's do some more with YouTube. Bruce, you got that ready to go?
I've got them all right here. So this one actually, this comes from Vampire Bear 13, and this is something kind of sort of we'll be talking about later in the episode. So he was talking about his favorite car movies, and Vampire Bear, I gotta say, I haven't even heard of 2 of these. Yeah, 2 of the 4 that you mentioned. So sorry, I was reading through. So he says King of the Mountain, starring Harry Hamlin, is one of his favorite car movies. I've never heard of that one.
Oh, I think I remember that like vaguely. Holy crap.
No Man's Land, starring Charlie Sheen. The Last Chase with Lee Majors. And then, of course, he says Bullet and Hollywood Nights. I've actually only heard one of those. I was...
The Hollywood Nights is a good one. It's very American Graffiti-esque.
Ooh.
It has the same kind of feel to it. I think it came out in the late 70s.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Early 80s. Tony Danza, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer and Tony Danza?
I think Tony Danza was in there.
I've never heard of this movie, but like I want to watch it now.
The Hollywood Nights. No, it's very much kind of a car movie. It's got a lot of humor in it, but it has sort of that American Graffiti kind of vibe going to it.
I'm a car guy and I'm a movie guy, so I'm gonna have to check these out. So thank you, Vampire Bear.
Yeah,
You've
for
sucked
sure.
up what to probably 6 hours of my life with your suggestion. So I appreciate that. So this is from Ted Adam Green, longtime listener, longtime commenter, and he said that Emily, who is his daughter, who I believe said he was taking to college the last time he commented. I believe that's what he said, but she did enjoy the show. Go figure. I have no idea why Jeep isn't going to sell that small EV here. I think he's talking about the Avenger because
Yes.
the Recon we don't necessarily. I assume he's talking about the Avenger. Anyway, maybe they think it would steal sales from a more expensive product. The Equinox EV is what the Bolt should have been 4 years ago. Ellipses, but okay. Yeah, he's kind of right. The GR Corolla is already a legit legend even before a single one is made. That's both a good and a bad thing. It'll be unobtainium for the masses, sadly.
It's true.
I hope that's not true.
It's true because I mean it's not super limited production, but they're not pumping them out like regular Corollas.
Right.
And
Right.
for at least a couple years, I bet it's going to be just about impossible to get one unless you go up to your dealership, unless you've already gone up to the dealership and have placed an order and dropped a deposit.
Yeah.
And now you just have to wait a year or so for it to get built, right?
Yep. So he has a question for us, Smith. How soon is too soon to reveal a new production car, even a concept that is practically the same thing? I will give you his answer first, and then you and I can respond. I think a year is the max, and really, I'm tired even of that.
Yep.
You think a year?
I'm tired of a year even. I don't think it should be a year. I think it should be 6 months.
I agree.
We'll put it at 6 months because that gives you time to, okay, here's the vehicle. You can gauge the reaction a little bit to see if maybe, maybe we need to add some stickers or something to make it a little more exciting. You know, there's that little bit of time, but it's not too much time to have people forget about it. Put it out there 6 months ahead of time. You can go up to your dealer starting tomorrow and get on the reservation list. Yeah, I think 6 months is a good time frame. These companies right now that are debuting vehicles that you're not going to be able to buy for a year or a year and a half, I think
more than a year in a lot of cases.
It feels less like, hey, we're excited about this vehicle and we want to show it to you right now.
It doesn't feel real.
And
it's
more,
like, okay,
and more like all of our competitors are doing this, so we better do something right now. It feels reactionary instead of instead of forward looking. It feels reactionary.
Totally.
When you go that far in advance.
It feels like you're nervous that someone else is going to undercut you, is what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
That, oh my God, if we don't reveal this right now, someone else is going to come out and take, the wind out of our wings. And this isn't going to be as special. So we better do it now. But then what ends up happening is you reveal a vehicle now and people forget about it. Like, people have lives, even car enthusiasts, even automotive writers like you and I, we have lives. And you're thinking, wait, that's not on sale yet? Oh, okay. I still got to wait. That's not coming for 3 months or.
Or it falls to us, i.e., the automotive journalists, to read through the various press releases that automakers will then eventually put out to try to keep the interest going. And it's like, okay, the vehicle debuted. Now we're going to talk about what the seats are made of. And
there's an automaker I know you're talking about right now
I'm not referring to any automakers, Bruce.
Are you sure?
I'm just completely just pulling this up here. Okay. Now, we want to talk about the engineering that went into the sound for the exhaust. Things like that to keep the interest over time. If it's a super interesting vehicle, we'll write about it. Because we know that our readers are also super interested in that vehicle.
Totally.
If it's sort of like a compliance vehicle, It's just not going to happen. So yeah, to answer
Or
your
not even
question,
that. If it's for it sometimes it depends on the brand as well. That
mhm.
I'm I'm not going to call a brand out. If XYZ automaker comes out with something versus ZYX, and people are really enthusiastic about XYZ, but ZYX they're like, I don't, who cares?
Yep.
Like that's part of it too. Yeah,
But yeah, to answer the question, I think 6 months is a really good time frame.
I
And of
agree.
course, we've said it before on here many times. Once upon a time, there really wasn't any time frame. The most famous instance of that being Ford selling a Mustang to a
Before it
private
debuted.
individual before it debuted. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that? And I still think there's a place for that. Hey, here's our brand new vehicle. You get people pumped up about it. You're showing it for the first time. How exciting is this? Oh, you want one? You can go tomorrow and get it. It's
Yeah.
ready to go. How many sales would they capture? I mean, when you see here's another way to think about it. How many times have we seen, just like with the Chrysler 300 we talked about, Bruce? Automaker reveal something. It's pretty cool. It's exciting. Everybody's interested. They run right away and put a deposit down. And then you hear, later down the road, well, we're expecting to convert, 50 or 60% of those deposits to sales. If it had not been a deposit, but hey, you can go down, put your money down, and we have these vehicles available right now, would you capture 80 or 90% of that? I don't know. I don't know. But I remember from my dealership days, working at dealerships, there was such a thing as the spot delivery, where if you have somebody that's test driving and they're interested in the vehicle, get them sold, get them in it, get them gone, and do the follow up later, because I mean,
Sure.
it's sort of a high pressure thing. Get them while they're hot on it, right?
Yep.
So ramping it up from an automaker perspective, you have this interesting new vehicle, get them while they're hot on it.
That's hard these days. So I will not name the automaker
Yes, please.
in
Yes,
this story.
please.
But
And
my wife and I,
for the record, we've had, we have little things about all automakers that drive everybody crazy a little bit.
Oh God, yes. Oh yeah. No, I'm not naming my wife and I went and looked at a car. She was really into it. I agreed, like, this looks like a cool car. Can we test drive it? And the salesperson was like, yeah, totally. Let's go test drive it. The salesperson goes and gets the keys, and they come back and we're like, I'm sorry, you can't test drive this vehicle because the person who bought it is an hour away and they are going to come pick it up. And this is the only example of that vehicle we have on the lot. So the automotive world is weird these days, is what I'm saying. Like, I hope things return to normal, but that is an entirely true story. That happened to me 6 weeks ago. That we were ready to go test drive it. We liked it. We wanted to go see how it was. And the salesperson came back and said, turns out we sold this vehicle already.
Yeah. No, so, it's a crazy time, but hey, thanks for the comments.
Oh, totally.
Folks listening out there, do we have time for, we should probably move on. We're getting a little long here.
I want to hit the retro Mercedes we were talking about, and then get into the car movie horror, the car horror movie chat we were talking about. So, speaking of, I don't have a good segment. This looks like it should be in like a gangster movie almost. It's not a horror movie, but a gangster movie.
So what we're talking about now, this is a restomod 1992 Mercedes-Benz 600.
It's almost more than that, though. Yes.
Tell us about it, Bruce, because you wrote it. And
I did.
And I added it to our river, so I knew a little bit about it.
Yep. And so Renntech, which is kind of a big name in Mercedes-Benz tuning. If you've got an older Mercedes-Benz, or even kind of a more modern one, Renntech, that's kind of
they do a lot with the new stuff.
Yeah. They took a 1992 600 SEL and they decided, we are going to make it perfect. We are going to make the version that you would want to drive today. And what they did was, so they took the 6-liter V12, which it's a 6-liter V12. You would think that's plenty. No. They bored and stroked it to 7.6 liters.
7.6 liter V12.
Right. And they added things like
Mercedes.
Titanium connecting rods. They added AMG camshafts. They ported the heads. They added their own air intake bits. And the result is an engine totally naturally aspirated. This thing makes 615 horsepower, 703 pound-feet of torque.
615 horsepower, naturally aspirated, 7.6 liter V12.
Yes. And so so in 92, apparently this would have originally come with a 4-speed automatic. That makes sense to me. But they apparently Mercedes refreshed this model. And when they refreshed it, they put in a 5-speed automatic. So they put the 5-speed automatic in. They also upgraded it to make sure that it could take this additional power. So you've got that much power with an extra gear. It, according to Renntech, it gets to 60 miles an hour in the low 5-second range. Top speed is 155 miles per hour. And it just looks so understated. Like, it has an AMG body kit. It has Renntech's own front splitter and a super stealthy rear spoiler on it. Like, you look at it and you're like, it's barely a rear spoiler. It's just like a little thing they add to it. And it just looks so stealthy and it looks so original. It's just a little bit more threatening with that AMG body kit and front splitter. But you would never roll up next to this thing and expect 615 horsepower.
No, it has a very subtle, stealthy. I mean that classic. I can't remember the specific the specific code for this generation, but it's just the very.
It's a W140.
Okay, there we go. W140. Yep. Just a very classic, large and in charge Benz.
Yeah,
with this ridiculously huge V12 engine. It's pretty much the exact opposite of the new C63 that we talked about.
Right. Rather than a 2-liter 4-cylinder, it's bumping up against an 8-liter V12, a 7.6 liter V12. And you look at it, if you're watching on YouTube, this image here, you look at that car and it doesn't look modified. Like, yeah, you can kind of see the side sills.
I mean, it looks like
front splitter. Like,
it's like it's the body kit with the classic 90s 5-spoke AMG wheels, right?
Yeah.
And hey, we've seen those before. Nobody really touches the engine under the hood. You would never expect this to be 600 plus horsepower with something that big. No, I think it's fantastic. I'm glad we talked about it because it's like,
and real quick, this is a one-off. Renntech made this, but they are accepting commissions as more. Basically, this is a proof of concept. This is what they could do. So if you happen to have a 600 SEL and you want to make it the ultimate 600 SEL, you can kind of send it to them and they will turn it into this. But okay, here we are. If you're watching on YouTube, along the side, it doesn't like it. It just looks so stealthy. It looks like something that's it's a black Mercedes-Benz. And especially at this time, this 90s S-Class, they're not especially big. It's basically the same size as an E-Class today.
I mean, it's not small. It has serious presence to it.
It's not small, but it's not like,
it's not a Maybach.
It's not a Maybach.
It's not a Maybach with reclining rear seats, right?
Yeah. It just looks so good. So we wanted to highlight that.
Very nice counterpoint to the C63. Yeah.
Okay.
How could we not talk about it?
Cool.
One thing that I didn't do after we finished comments is tell people to send your comments to us at podcast@motor1.com.
Exactly.
I'm going to keep harping that. We like to get emails. We like to get comments. We like to get the stuff that makes us think.
And we love comments on YouTube too, but emails are always fun because they're kind of out of the ordinary. So
yes.
Podcast@motor1.com, but Motor1 Podcast on YouTube as well. We love that stuff.
And now we're going to make you think a little bit, maybe.
Who is the you? Our listeners are the you?
The Ramblers. Are we going to make the Ramblers think a little bit? Because I got to be honest, what we're doing here with movies after we talked about it, I was like, hey, that sounds really cool. And then when I thought about it a little bit, I realized I don't watch very many horror movies.
Oh,
So I might be
buddy,
scraping the
I got
barrel
your
here a little
back.
bit. I might be scraping the barrel a little bit just to refresh our memory here a little bit. What exactly are we doing here with these car horror movies? What's the point here?
Sure. So obviously, we are an automotive focused podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It is, as we were recording this, it's September 21st. So that means it'll come out on the 24th. So we're coming up on October. And I don't know our listeners, but a lot of people, once it becomes that kind of October time frame, they want to watch a scary movie. And maybe it's not like, oh my God, it scares me and I can't watch any of it. Maybe it's a cheesy horror movie or something like that you can just enjoy. But that's kind of one of the cool things about October. I grew up in Ohio. I've been in Indiana, places like that. But like when those leaves start changing, air gets kind of crispy, it
was
just
95 degrees here yesterday, Bruce. Or no,
well,
on Monday.
It wasn't here. It wasn't here. It'll get cold there. I know it will get cold there. You told me about the storms you get.
It will get cold.
But yeah, so it's getting to be about that that type of time where maybe you want to throw in I'm going to call them a horror movie, but I'm going to put an asterisk there. Maybe not scary, maybe just a fun kind of
suspenseful.
Like that. Suspenseful, but also we're an automotive podcast. So let's find the ones that kind of elevates the cars to kind of being the stars of the show of that horror. And so since I kind of introduced this topic, I'm going to start out actually with what I think is a symbolic trilogy, just to kind of get the ball rolling. And these are from Stephen King. All three of them are Stephen King.
You're taking two of my choices. Go ahead.
Okay, no, never mind. Okay, do you want me to do something else? Because I can.
No, jump. I mean, come on. You can't talk about a car horror movie without talking about Christine, right?
Exactly. That's the one I was going to bring up.
Is there a more definitive car horror / scary movie than Christine?
That's the big one. So it's a 50. Is it a 58 or a 59 Plymouth Fury?
That's a 1958 Plymouth Fury.
It's a 58. Okay. And so I have only ever seen the movie. I have not read the book. I will shout out a podcast that I like. It's called Just King Things. And they are going through the Stephen King books in publication order. And they have done Christine already. Yep, that's the car. And if you watch the movie, though, it kills one of the people on the production line as it's going down the production line. And then this nerdy guy, he ends up buying this car and it kind of turns him evil. And also the car is evil and the car starts killing people.
So guy, to put a little bit more to it, the nerdy guy finds it's kind of a wreck.
Yep.
He finds it. And like so many young car enthusiasts, he develops an attachment for the car.
Yep.
And the car's personality, for whatever reason, develops an attachment for him. So it does. Christine becomes like the jealous homicidal girlfriend.
It does, yeah. Because there's a point in the movie. So he's a nerdy guy, and understand Stephen King kind of grew up in the 50s. So he kind of has this kind of 50s mindset. So he's this nerdy guy and he starts getting bullied by these kind of greaser type guys, and they bully him and they eventually find his car and they destroy Christine. That's what he names this car. He just, the bullies absolutely destroy it.
Yep.
And there's this scene where the car starts like putting itself
back together. And it's, I mean, that's like one of the creepy moments in the movie, because up till this point, it's like, okay, and I'm trying to remember the character's name. Augie, is that right?
That sounds right.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but up to this point, it's just him working on the car, and he does this beautiful restoration on it, right?
Exactly.
And the car looks fantastic. And then, the bullies, I mean, the fenders are ripped up, the lights are smashed out, the glass is just destroyed. And he's in his shop, and he's just like, okay, show me.
Exactly.
And as soon as he says that,
me.
the headlights come on, and the creepy music starts.
Well, no, it's not creepy music. It's always 50s music. It's
no.
late.
It's late 50s music when the car is killing people.
Yes.
But at that moment when it's like reforming itself, it's like this eerie, this kind of supernatural.
Okay.
I mean, I remember
sure.
It was creepy the first time I saw it.
But yeah, the show me line is like, he knows there's something weird about this car. He's like, show me. And the car, like the fenders straighten out and like everything becomes perfect again. And yeah, it's a good one. Like
it's when you're talking about suspenseful horror stuff with cars.
Yeah,
I think that it universally has to be the go-to, Christine.
I think you're absolutely
Plymouth
right.
Fury. I mean, to this day, when you see a 58 Plymouth Fury on the road, I mean, even just the presence of that car. I mean, I think it's a very nice car. I think it's a very beautiful car. It's the epitome of the 50s with the huge fins.
Yep.
But it's still, you still kind of get this almost this vibe that it secretly wants to kill you.
Exactly. So
thanks Stephen King.
So another Stephen King film, and I can't show this to you, but I am, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm just showing you kind of the thumbnails.
This is the second one.
Yes. So this is Maximum Overdrive from 1986. Stephen King definitely had a thing for haunted cars for a little while. So you have Christine, and then you have Maximum Overdrive, which is the cheesiest movie. It's got Emilio Estevez. It's got Yeardley Smith, who is Lisa Simpson, and then a bunch of people who you've never seen in films before. And Stephen King directed this one. Allegedly, he says he has no memory of directing this because this was borderline the height of his alcoholism / cocaine addiction. So he claims to have no memory of this film, but he directed it, and it is about cars and specifically trucks, semi-trucks that come to life and want to kill people. And that's basically the movie. So you get Emilio Estevez at a truck stop, and he is an ex-con, and he's being exploited by his boss because he's on parole. And so if he doesn't work, his boss is going to turn him into the parole guy. And so he's working at this truck stop, and then all of these trucks come to life around him, and he's trying to like live through it. And it's a bad movie, but it's a good movie.
It's bad, but it's good. And AC/DC did the entire soundtrack for that movie.
They did, yes.
And it's important to mention that, I mean, the evil trucks are obviously sort of the stars, but all machinery, it's like became possessed.
Right. Sometimes not making any sense. There is an electric knife. Like if anyone used like an electric carving knife, that comes to life.
The electric knife comes to life and somehow cuts the person that's holding it.
Yes. There is a Jeep with a machine gun, and the machine gun starts doing Morse code to contact the people inside because there's a Boy Scout inside who understands Morse code. So there's a machine gun that is shooting in the air, and spoilers, it's Maximum Overdrive. You don't mind spoilers, but there's a point where Emilio Estevez is by this Jeep with this machine gun, and so he smacks the machine gun and it starts spinning around and starts shooting so he can like run away before the machine gun can hit him. It's the dumbest movie, but it's so fun.
It's properly bad, and it's properly bad in a good way. And I still remember the very beginning, or I guess, it was pretty close to the beginning. When the drawbridge starts to go up,
that's the very beginning. That's like 3 minutes into the movie.
and the van with AC/DC on the side like goes up and crashes into the bridge. And then there's the kid who's like trying to get home from baseball practice, riding
slightly later. Yeah.
And the vending machine starts shooting like cans of soda out at him.
Yep.
Trying to, and you can see there's people like laying all around the vending machine with like these big welts on their head, dead from where they got beamed in the head. I got to do a quick share screen on this because I mean, this is also one of my choices, obviously. Perhaps the creepiest truck ever
Oh,
created.
yeah, the Green Lantern truck, which I
The
don't think they got, like, credit. Like, I don't think they paid Marvel to use the Green Goblin face. I think they just did it and no one ever paid attention and
and
they've
nobody
just gotten away
ever
from
caught it. Because I mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's the rig is Happy Toys, and it's got this big green goblin face on the hood.
Yep.
And yeah, so of course that has to come to life and
Oh,
surround
totally.
everybody in the truck stop. If you haven't seen it, for God's sakes, go see it. We won't spoil it because there is a little bit of
There's
a
nothing to
twist.
spoil.
There-
It's
There's
trucks
there's
come to life.
there's a little bit of a twist at the very end, I guess, right?
I
There's
guess,
just a
sure.
little bit of a twist at the very end. But yeah, definitely one of my choices. Yeah, and you've got a third yet to go, Bruce?
I want to shout out the last of what I'm going to call Stephen King's car trilogy. This one is not about a haunted car per se, but it is people in a car, and that is Cujo. And that stars a dog that has been bitten by a bat with rabies. So it is a Saint Bernard with rabies. And a mother and her son are trapped in their broken down Ford Pinto.
Which by
Yeah,
itself is a horror movie.
exactly.
I'm
The
trapped in a
idea,
Pinto. This thing
yeah,
could explode.
the idea of the movie is, so the father in this relationship, he is in advertising. So he goes off on an advertising trip. Their car breaks down. So they take it to the local mechanic. Unfortunately, they don't know this. Obviously, the mechanic has already been killed by his rabid dog. So the child and the mother are locked in this car while this rabid dog stalks them. So it is not a haunted car, but it is a film that takes place almost entirely within a car. So I kind of have to count that as the third of this trilogy. So if you've never seen Cujo, I would definitely check it out. Sadly, a lot of these movies, Maximum Overdrive specifically, used to just be on YouTube for free, and it's not anymore. Sadly, we live in a world where rights holders are cracking down on stuff like this. So I looked on YouTube and also archive.org, because if I could have found it, I would have given you folks a link, but you either have to rent Cujo or buy it. But I would recommend it. It's not
They're
it's not
worth
a
it.
it's not a great movie, but it's a fun movie. And even now there's just a lot of suspense to it because it happens on this like sweltering day. So you have this child and this mother in this car, and the windows are wound up and they can't start the car because it's broken down, so they can't go anywhere. And so they're getting hotter and hotter and hotter in this car, and anyone who's been on a car on a hot day knows what that's like. But then they also have this rabid dog stalking around them. So just it I would recommend it. If you, of the three, if you got to watch one of the three, start with Christine, then do Maximum Overdrive, then do Cujo. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. Very good. Well, let me jump in with one that
Yeah.
that might surprise you here. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I saw this movie once a while ago. So I don't
Okay.
remember a lot of the details about it, but I remember the gist of it. It came out in 2007 and it was called Death Proof. It's a Quentin Tarantino film.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about here?
This is one of my best theatrical experiences. I saw this in college in its original theatrical run, where it was this and
the double feature, the Grindhouse double feature.
The Grind. Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
I didn't catch it at that point. I caught it later as the standalone. Kurt Russell plays this aging stunt driver who has this badass black, like murder black Chevy Nova.
Yep.
That's supposedly death proof. It's his stunt car. There's this cage in the car. And the gist of it is, I mean, he goes and he kind of stalks girls and kills them.
Well, no, that's only the first half.
Well, that's the first half, but then the second half, the girls stalk and go after him.
Right. So the second half, and I'll spoil this kind of sorta. So it is about a bunch of actresses who are on a shoot.
Yes.
I think they're 2 or 3 actresses and then like the stunt person. And so they end up renting a white Dodge Challenger like it is in Vanishing Point.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember that
and
part.
So you end up with this car chase of a white Challenger and, as you can see here, this black menacing as hell Nova. and it's a car chase for like 45 minutes. It's good. You've got this woman who's Zoe Bell is her name. She was Uma Thurman's stunt double actually on Kill Bill. That's why she ended up getting the role, because she knew Quentin Tarantino. And so, yeah, she is on the hood of this Challenger while Kurt Russell is trying to wreck them off the road. And yeah, it's good.
But then the second half, the girls, and isn't it like, correct me if I'm wrong, you obviously remember this movie a lot more than I do. It was like a year or so afterwards.
Yep,
now the girls come back, and
no, it's different girls, because he kills, I forget who the actress is. For some reason I want to say it's like Shannon Doherty, but that's not right.
I thought one of them came back.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, I co-sign this recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, Tarantino. Hey, I'm a Tarantino fan. And the car chases, they're good. The horror, I mean, I don't know that I call it horror. I mean, I'm not sitting there.
I call it more of a thriller than horror, but I'm not
thriller. I mean, I'm not sitting there, scared to death. Oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to come around the corner? But no, just a good kind of Halloween kind of car flick.
Totally. So what time are we at? Okay, so we got time. I'll do one last one. And this is one, again, this is unfortunately a movie that was on YouTube for free for ages, and it's now not. So sorry, folks, you're going to have to go buy this one. I do highly recommend it, though. It is not a horror movie per se. I would call it more of a sci-fi movie. And that is, here, I'm grabbing my copy. That is Panic in Year Zero. Ooh. And the idea of this movie is that it is a family of four on vacation near California, and an atomic bomb drops on Los Angeles. And so they are out of it. They are not near the atomic bomb, but it is the panic in Year Zero, because everyone who is in LA starts fleeing as fast as they can. And so this family, they have, I was trying to look it up right beforehand, but I couldn't find it. They're in a Mercury wagon. I don't think it's a Turnpike Cruiser. It's
I think I've seen part of this movie now that you're talking about it. It's an older movie, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's from 58.
Okay.
62. Sorry, 62.
Okay.
But yeah, and so it is this family. It's very much, if anyone out there, and this is another kind of movie like this that I would recommend, The Hills Have Eyes, which is about a family that kind of goes out and they have to protect themselves in their RV. It's kind of sort of like that. It's just, it's not so much horror, but it's very much survival. Like they ended up, this family, they're kind of at like the very front of things. So they end up going to this little town and they're knocking on the door, and they get this guy and they buy basically everything he has. And he's like, what's going on? And the main character's like, whatever you do, lock your doors, because a bunch of other people are going to be coming. And so it just kind of progresses from there. And it's just, by the end of it, it's an inexpensively made film. You can tell a lot of it was made on set. Some of it was shot on location, but it really makes you feel like that kind of survival thing. It's very much, I'm trying to think what else I could compare it to. A little bit of Red Dawn, maybe, as well. Obviously, this is before that, but just like the survival attitude of being on your own, but being with your family and wanting to protect those people. And again, this is a film from 62. This is not a modern film by any stretch of the imagination, but they're in this car and this RV for 80 now. Actually, now that I think about it, even at the end of the movie, they're in it. So they take that with them through the entire film. So Panic in Year Zero. You can definitely find the trailer on YouTube. I've got it. I'm looking at it here. But so yeah.
When you started talking about that, it started to click in my head. I haven't seen the whole thing, but maybe I'm gonna have to go back and revisit that. I think it might be on Amazon if you happen to subscribe to Amazon Prime.
You know what?
I think it might be on there because I think I started to watch part of it because it looked pretty interesting. I remember a wagon. I want to say there was like a camper. It could be Could be something completely different. While you're doing that, let me do just a couple quick shout outs here to wrap this up. You've heard me talk about this movie before. I'll talk about it again here really quick, just because I think it's one of the great kind of unknown car movies. And that's, of course, The Wraith. In fact, I think I was just talking about it. I think I was just talking. Well, it was one of my picks a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
When we were talking about movies. Charlie Sheen, Sherilyn Fenn, Nick Cassavetes.
But yeah, that counts as a horror movie because he's dead. Like
he's
a ghost.
I still don't know that I would call it horror. I would call it more like supernatural thriller sci-fi, because it starts off. I mean, there's this gang in town that they're a car gang, right? Mm-hmm. They're bad guys, but they all drive cars. They force people into street races to they have to race for pink slips, right? They force people in the street races, and if they think they're going to lose, they kill them. And that's what happens right in the very beginning. This guy gets forced into the street race. They end up killing him, and then he comes back as the Wraith. And his whole mission is to basically wipe out the bad guys in the car gang and get revenge. And he does that by driving this crazy futuristic car, which is that Dodge Concept that we talked about. The races are always side by side at first, and then all of a sudden the Wraith just like pulls away, leaves them completely in the dust. So the guy's trying to catch up and come around a corner. The Wraith is parked like, sideways in the road. The guy smashes into the car, blows up, person's dead. The Wraith reappears, reforms back into the car, drives away. And that's pretty much the crux of the film. But I mean, there's some cool car chases in there. If you like 80s cars, there's some very cool cars in there. I'm a big fan of the Dodge Daytona. There's a Dodge Daytona CS in there. There's a C3 Corvette. I mean, it's not as bad as Maximum Overdrive. It's not as like bad in the bad sense, but it's just as good, I think, in that similar bad sense, if you're following what I'm saying there.
Sure.
Wraith, definitely one worth watching. I don't know if that's on Prime yet or not. And then a quick shout out. This isn't a movie. This is a TV series. But if we're talking about like kind of horror thriller stuff,
I know where you're going.
Supernatural was on the CW for like 14 or 15 years. I was and still am a big fan of it. I'm trying to bring a picture up here right now. Of course, you had Sam and Dean Winchester, the brothers that are out fighting the forces of evil. They fought everything from, it starts in the beginning to, from just like, demons, to Lucifer.
It's a lot of demons.
They fight everybody, but like the third star of Supernatural was a 67 Chevrolet Impala 4-door.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that car pretty much single-handedly caused the values of the 67 Impala 4-door to rise, because the classic 60s Impala, it's already a popular car, but sure, everybody wants the 2-door. Now the 4-doors are right up there. Let me zoom this image in here a little bit. The 4-doors are right up there because of this series. And yeah, it finally ended, I think, in 2020. Yeah, because they were delayed with COVID. But Jensen Ackles, who was one of the stars in the series, it was in his contract. He had it stipulated in his contract, when the show is over, I get the car. And yeah, he got like the hero car, the one that they do all the, all the close-ups and the really nice shots in. Mm-hmm. And if you're into just like supernatural kind of scary, spooky stuff, there are some really tense episodes. There are some really funny episodes. They did a really great job of kind of paying a lot of fan service in a lot of ways. There was even an arc where like this guy somehow was getting these clairvoyant visions of their lives and was writing a series of books on their lives. And they end up finding out they go to the supernatural convention where it's like they're reading books of everything they'd done, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this sort of fan fiction kind of style. And it's just there are a few episodes like that. But yeah, come Halloween. I mean, I've got a few of the seasons on Blu-ray. It's
My wife and I
definitely a
watched
fun
I
watch.
think the first 3 seasons. I think we fell off right after that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will say like the first 5 seasons are the best. Admittedly, it gets a little sketchy from there. It's like,
Sure.
okay, how many more things can they do? How many more times can they come back from the dead? Right. But good series. Good for good for Halloween times.
Yep. Well, let's wrap it up. It's been fun. I love scary movies. I was watching Hellraiser yesterday, in fact, and I plan on. The nice thing is, what is it? I can't remember if it's Hulu or Amazon Prime. One of them have Hellraiser 1 and 2, so I was going to rewatch both of those.
I've never seen those.
Hellraiser 2 is the better movie, my opinion.
I've never seen them. I mean, I caught like all the Friday the 13th stuff.
Yep.
I caught most of the Nightmare on Elm Street stuff. The Hellraiser stuff from the 80s. And isn't there a reboot happening right now with it?
There is. I think it comes out next year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, they redid Pinhead as a woman, and that's literally all I know. I've only seen like the promo images. I know nothing about the movie. But yeah.
Okay. Well, folks,
apparently it's supposed to be creepy. But yeah.
What are your choices? What are your choices for scary movies related to cars? Podcast@motor1.com. I'll say it again, podcast@motor1.com. Comment on our YouTube page, Motor One Podcast. Comment on our article that goes up every Friday. Like, follow, subscribe everywhere you can find us. It helps us grow and bring more fun content like talking about scary movies while talking about a 671 horsepower 2024 Mercedes-AMG C63 SE Performance. Whew. That's a big name. That name, just trying to say that name is kind of scary.
It is. But yeah, it's been fun. Next week, we'll be back here. As always, we love you guys. We love all our listeners. We love your comments. It's fun. We like doing this show, honestly. Mm-hmm. We tentatively have some guests coming soon-ish. So if you get bored with just us, it won't be like that for too long. But good afternoon, good evening, or good night. We appreciate all your comments. We appreciate all your responses, all your likes, all your subscriptions, all of that. And like Smith said, podcast@motor1.com is the email address. Motor One Podcast is the YouTube site. Yeah, we love it. We love hearing from you. Thank you very much for spending your time with us. And with that, I will say goodbye and have a nice one. So, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.